They see the awards and the success, but tell us a little bit about who you were before any of that existed.
I'm sorry, it was a little bit late, but
It's delayed.
I like it. I like it. Well, you have to move that up to the joke. And I remember him saying, dream big. Whatever you do in life, don't be afraid to dream big. And so I was always a big dreamer, which drove me to make some of the choices I made, to include kind of moving to LA and Hollywood and trying to make my way in the film industry and national television and other things. And I was like 24 years old, 23 years old. And I must have had like, I must have looked like a biggest dork ever. I was just young, but I mean, imagine at that age, like I'm going to be in an exclusive room with 4 other people while Jennifer Lopez is like getting naked. That is maybe one of the smartest people of our generation is Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden did not get disappeared. He released some of the deepest secrets of our government and escaped.
welcome to the Common Ground podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast. That's right, it is, as always, your boy, Philly. Philly is here. He is ready. He is not feeling blue. I'm feeling red. So, and as always, I have she's beautiful behind the camera, in front of the camera, to the side of the camera, on top of a camera, any part of a camera. She looks good. That is Miss Sydney Nicole. How you doing, Sydney?
I'm hanging in there. How's it going, Philly? Not from Philly.
You are never going to let that down.
I'm never going to let it die. You can thank your dad.
I spent how many years of my life in Philadelphia, and he's going to go and throw me under the bus like that. Like, I spent like 40 something years. And he's like, you're not from Philly. Because I technically am just outside the city limits, but all that time spent inside the city limits, and I don't get credit for it. But let's get to more important matters. Did you hear that there was a movie director arrested this weekend?
I did not.
Yeah, evidently he made a huge scene in public.
Oh no. All right, what else you got?
How many directors does it take to change a light bulb?
Oh boy, I don't know how many.
Just one more guy. One more. I swear, just one more guy. You know how one more take? Just give me one more take.
One more take. Yep, I got it. All right, vote for your best dad joke in the comments. I liked the first one.
All right, yes. And submit one. If you don't like mine, submit it. We'll read it on air. I'll give you credit for it. So, yeah, and that's going to bring us to the real main reason why we're here.
The main event.
The main event, the feature premiere, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't picked up on the dad jokes on even how I introduced Sydney, you might be wondering what kind of topic we got today, right? Well, our guest today is Barry Walton. Barry is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, documentary producer, author, and educator who has spent more than 2 decades working in film and television, telling powerful stories about people, perseverance, and the pursuit of purpose. Throughout his career, Barry has produced multiple documentary features on Amazon Prime, worked with major brands, professional athletes, and organizations. He has built a reputation for creating stories that inspire audience to think deeper about life, struggle, and success. But Barry's journey didn't begin with confidence or certainty. Early in life, he struggled academically and faced moments that left him questioning his abilities and his future. Instead of allowing those challenges to define him, Barry chose to confront them head-on, betting on himself, self-funding, and his early creative projects. building a career that ultimately led to award-winning work and international recognition. Today, Barry shares the lessons he learned from that journey through filmmaking, teaching, and his writing, helping others to understand that failure, insecurity, and hardships don't have to determine the outcome of your life. Today, we're going to dive into Barry's story, talk about overcoming invisible struggles, pursuing your dreams despite setbacks, and how storytelling can help shape the way we see ourselves in the world around us. And he has just rebranded himself as Walton Film Studios. Please welcome to the Common Ground podcast, Mr. Barry Walton.
Hey guys, I'm glad to be here. And those jokes are pretty bad jokes, John. Philly, that was a rough round of documentary jokes. No, I'm giving you a hard time. I liked them. Those that was good on you for digging them up.
Do you know any movie jokes?
I'm not. I do. I wish I did. And I used to have like some good dad jokes. What are they? What are they? There used I used to have this creative director who had some great ones about cows. And they're skipping my mind right now. I didn't prepare for them, but there was a joke about like something with a half a beef. Anyways, I wish I had them. I wish I could pull them out. I do not have them.
That's funny. You can bring it to our Monday happy hour before the premiere of your episode.
Yeah, I should. I should have had some jokes prepared. I'm sorry, Philly. And instead,
okay. We'll forgive you this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Barry,
Well, take two, right?
Oh, I remember. What do you call a cow laying on the ground? What do you call a cow taking a nap? Ground beef.
Ground.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, see, I'm not even that good at them.
See,
I should
y'all
stay
are
away.
I got a couple.
Yeah,
I was thinking, I was trying to figure it out, but
well, when he said laying on the ground, I was like, maybe he gave away part of the joke right there.
I did. Yeah, it's ground. There was a whole series. I think they're good dad jokes, but I'm just not good at delivering them.
Well, regardless of your dad joke ability or lack thereof, we love hearing them, and thank you for being with us today. This is going to be an exciting episode. One of the things that I want to kind of set the scene up for, there's going to be a lot of movie jokes in here without even meaning to, just a pun intended moment. We need like a sound for every time that it happens almost. But when somebody Googles your name, Barry, they see the awards and the success, but tell us a little bit about who you were before any of that existed.
I'm sorry, it was a little bit late, but
it's delayed.
I like it. I like it. Well, you have to move that up to the joke.
Right.
I grew up in small town America. I grew up in Michigan, farm country, in a town of 300 people.
Wow.
And we would ride the bus 25 minutes back and forth to school every day. My mom was a school bus driver, and my father worked in a foundry. Originally worked in my father was a victim of all the factories moving out, the end of the industrial age. He used to say to me, my grandfather and my father always worked in the factories. There was always jobs, and now there's no more jobs. And the small town that he grew up in kind of got shut down, and he went to another town where he worked in a steel foundry his entire life. And he spent 35 years of his life working in factories, which I have to give him a lot of credit. I don't envy that, but I can respect it. So I kind of grew up in a simple life, but I was a big dreamer. Always was a big dreamer. And always wanted to. It was kind of like someone I looked up to really more than anything. He was a member. His name was Orville Merlat. And Orville Merlat had started Merlat Cabinet. Merlat Cabinet was, he was a Walmart. It was its own version of Walmart's. It was a guy who started a company out of his garage and grew it into like a multi-million, probably billion-dollar company producing cabinets. And his family had built the school that we went to when I was a kid. And I remember him saying, dream big. whatever you do in life, don't be afraid to dream big. And so I was always a big dreamer, which drove me to make some of the choices I made, to include kind of moving to LA and Hollywood and trying to make my way in the film industry and national television and other things. But that's a little bit of how I grew up, a little bit of my background. Small town kid that went off to the big city. And then you've got some of my life recap and in your opening summary, but that's kind of where I started.
So at what point did filmmaking and storytelling, was that always the passion? Or when you hear small town, usually the outcome of growing up in a small town is not filmmaking and storytelling. Where did that evolve in your upbringing?
Well, that the birth of storytelling would have, well, I've got a couple of thoughts. Mm, My uncle Ike was a farmer, but when we would get together for family gatherings, everybody gathered around the table to listen to my uncle Ike tell a story. And he was one of the best storytellers you would ever meet. He was an old country boy. He'd tell fishing stories. He'd tell hunting stories, and everyone wanted to listen when Uncle Ike started talking. And there was something about that storytelling that Uncle Ike had that I always was like so kind of enamored by. I was like, man, to tell a story like Uncle Ike, to be able to capture the attention of so many people and tell it was such vivid kind of details. I was like, Uncle Ike was amazing. And so I think at some level, without realizing it, you grow up a small town, you don't know what careers are available to you. You don't know what options are available to you. All you know is what's around you. And there were farmers, and there were factory workers, and there were pastors, and there were mechanics, and a little bit of bits and pieces here and there in the middle, but not, you didn't have artists, you didn't have filmmakers, you didn't have actors, all that stuff was not where I grew up. So when I was in the I think it was the fourth grade, and I struggled in school. I think one of the few accomplishments I made was in the fourth grade. I wrote a book called The First Boy in Space. And that book won awards, and it was the best in the class. It was probably the greatest achievement I made in school, because prior to that, I had basically been a failure in school. I'd gotten held back in the third grade, and there was a bunch of I was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker of a kid. I spent a little bit too much time in the office with the principal than I ought, and my grades kind of suffered because I was a class clown, which was on my third grade kind of report card by my third grade teacher. And so I was kind of not doing great in school, but that book was the first thing that I achieved that I got recognized for in academia. And so that inspired it. My Uncle Ike inspired it. And at first I went to school to be a minister, because the only thing I knew is, like I told you, factory workers, farmers, and pastors. And I saw a pastor, they were up on a stage and they got to tell a story. So that was my first, I pursued that. I pursued being a minister. But what I really liked was being a positive influence on people's lives, more than someone who is in the business of running a church and overseeing a church. And so and while I have nothing but respect or appreciation for them, in the end, I realized I had gone from small town to college in Minneapolis, and I was like, why not go from college in Minneapolis to major city in Los Angeles? And in Minneapolis, I had done some acting. I had started doing theater. I was on. I got in a film with Billy Bob Thornton and Bill Paxton and the director Sam Raimi. And the name of the film was A Simple Plan. And I was a police officer in that, and an extra. And in that, I had built a relationship with Sam Raimi's director assistant, and I saw behind the scenes of the studio, and I got to see where they built the scene inside of the studios in Minneapolis. They had built a replica of the entire house that they filmed in, and I got to see the behind the scenes of filming, and I'd always been enamored by that since seeing Rocky, which I think captured the minds of a lot of kids of my age. But I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's what I want to do. And so those things all kind of came together in that moment, and I knew one person in LA, and I made the jump, and that's
Mm.
and so that kind of that and after the jump, it kind of I could continue on and how I evolved, but that was the first major hurdle, and then from there it led me to where I am today.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah, I love the whole backstory. And I think that as I was listening to you, I was really just thinking about how we've changed as a culture. And what I mean is you talked about Orwell, I forget his last name. Um I want to think Redenbacher all sudden, but I know it's not. It's some Melville or something like that, I think you said, right?
Merlat, yeah, Merlat.
Merlap. Starting from his garage, and I think of how many, big companies, you think of what it was at IBM who started right at in their garage. It's like we today think that we need to start at the penthouse, you know? Like there's a beauty, I think, of starting. Like we've missed the whole boat. We want to jump 10 steps ahead. There's this whole beauty of starting in the garage, right? And starting in that grassroots type of I I see a I see a need, I develop a solution, and I start from the ground floor. We want to skip all these steps. We want to make it big. We want to be viral the first day we put out one video, instead of saying, okay, what am I developing? And I think we it all starts with like the story, right? The beginning of your story, and that all leads to starting in the garage to saying, okay, I see something that either I perceive a need or the needs my passion to come out, and in filmmaking, in director, I get enamored with something that's going on, and I go, how am I going to make that a reality, you know? Um, so I love that, I think we need to be reminded that you don't just start out on top, and I love your backstory, how you struggled, how, you came up and directing wasn't even the first place you looked, but you became enamored with that stage, that behind the scenes. Um, there's another thing you said that really stuck with me, and that was to dream big, you know? And I wanna say to that, do you still dream big? Because I think of the person I think of when you said dream big, I think of Matthew McConaughey and that speech that he gave, I think at the end, I think it was the Emmys, where he talked about how somebody asked him who his hero was. And he goes, "It's me 10 years in the future. I'm always chasing myself. I'm never like that dreaming big never stops because I'm always trying to dream bigger. I'm always trying to catch where I'm supposed to be." Do you feel like that is still who you are today? You still dream big? You still are chasing yourself 10 years in the future?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, I was just I went to a thing today where I met with, it was a leadership group, and I met with an individual by the name of General Mixon. And General Mixon served in the U.S. Army as a general for multiple years, and now he has a leadership group where he helps individuals kind of grow and learn and position themselves differently. Um, and he had this sheet, some of the things we're working through, and one of the things that it said is basically like what is the end goal, like what is your purpose, like what are you doing this for, what do you want to achieve. And I thought it was interesting because I'm like, God, I still like feel like I haven't gotten anywhere near what I dream to be. Um, and I have not gotten. I have, I can distill down the sound bites of my life experience, and it can be very it can sound, very intimidating or very inspiring, whichever whoever you are and however you're taking it, to kind of run through what you did in reading my bio. But when I look at my life, I'm like, I am really kind of very far away from like what I actually want to achieve and where I really want to go. Um, and so I guess the answer, and so the exercise in that class was like articulating exactly what you want. And, for me, it was like, I'm going to be the best filmmaker and storyteller of documentary filmmaking and brand content in the country. And here I am. I'm a long ways from that. And right now, in the vicinity of that would be Werner Herzog. I don't know if you know Werner Herzog or other, I'm not in love with Michael Moore, but Michael Moore's on that radar, and you have a whole list of filmmakers. Billy, what's, oh, how am I drawing a blank on his name? He made Cocaine Cowboys. His name is Billy. Blah blah blah. Anyways, there's a whole list of filmmakers out there. Werner Herzog is at the top. That I'm like, I'd love to be in company with them in my career and in my experiences, and I'm a long ways off. So yeah, that's a roundabout way of saying yes. I still dream big. I dream almost too big. It's kind of torturous, but I can't help but not.
Billy Corbin.
Billy Corbin, thank you. Yeah, Billy Corbin, and the guy who always does all the PBS documentaries. I know these names. They
Sure.
just
Whenever you have to call on it, you're like, "Ah,
Put
you had to ask."
yeah, I mean, if you put me on the spot, for some reason, my brain some days are better than others, but I pulled off Werner Herzog, so I'll just cash in on that one. I got one. Michael Moore, whatever. Anyways, that's yeah.
What does he direct?
Well, he was big. He did Fahrenheit 9/11. He was a big like tear down the conservative party. But he became famous. What he was really good at before he got into just like political propaganda, what he was really good at was Roger and Me, which was one of his most famous documentaries, and that was about Ford outsourcing all of their labor to, Mexico and offshore, and basically their hypocrisy in doing so, and because they were like, hey, we're trying to make America better, et cetera, et cetera, but in the process they're like really just
Yeah,
gutting communities. In Flint, Michigan was where he was from. That was what he was most famous for. And he was also famous for Bowling for Columbine, which was about the Columbine shooters. That's when Michael Moore was in his sweet spot and in his heyday, because it was kind of on the edge of like who are we as a country, and it was kind of on the edge of like these greedy bastards. But then he got into just like straight out propaganda, and he lost me. He lost me a little bit. And it's not because it doesn't have a place. It was just like, and it's not because I'm on team red or team blue. It was just, it wasn't good documentary filmmaking. It was one-sided propaganda. Documentary filmmaking is meant to be objective, not subjective. And his was not, that stuff was not objective at
I
all.
appreciate that perspective, and the ability to, like, see that side of the coin, because I agree with you on the documentary side. It does get wishy-washy when you start trying to push an agenda, and then is it a documentary anymore? So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It was his agenda, and that's what we've lost so much interest in. So much, that's why so much of the country has turned its back on these preposterous moral positioning of like parties and brands and shows, and Disney going through its like phase of like perverting the country on its mission to serve like God only knows what, its own self-interest. But like like stop pushing down people's throat your agenda. Give people something that they can think about, and you're going to be okay. But like as soon as you go down the space of like, okay, you're a bunch of idiots and I'm going to teach you why you're idiots, And if you don't like it, we're just going to shut you up. That's
So I got a question. And it's a little off topic of where we're going to go, but it's on this topic. You know, in today's age, unless you're um, what is it, paying for it, is it possible not
Yeah.
to what self
Self.
financing? Self financing.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't think of the word. I had a brain fog moment. Unless you're self financing, is it even possible to be objective and not subjective, you know? Because studios, I feel, are pushing agendas. Feels like everywhere you go to try to make, well, every time I hear of a movie being made, there to be agendas behind everything, whether it's the studio, whether it's actors. Or, is it even possible if you're not self-funding, self-financing it to be objective in today's market?
um probably not. Probably not. I mean, funding is a challenging piece, and you do have to. And at this point of the game, you know, the stakes are very high, and you have to have distribution, and distribution is where you make your money back. So if you don't have distribution, you're going to spend all that money, and you're not ever going to risk reward ratio gets way out of whack, because you're going to take a ton of risk, and minus it being some like random like lottery ticket that goes for broke and viral, which is unpredictable, and anyone that says it's not is lying to you. You're not gonna have a chance of making your money back, let alone like dealing with the reality that it's hard to make your money back in general. So no, you're probably not going to be objective. um and that's for both sides of the ticket. Um, so it's a fair observation. I do think it's hard to be objective. But I do think you can be neutral, and I do think you can make an effort. 60 Minutes. I think it was 60 Minutes did a great documentary. It's called The Great American Divide, and it spanned the presidency of Barack Obama and the first term of Trump's presidency. And I feel like they did a good job of interview, and that's a publicly, I think 60 Minutes is under PBS, and so it's public funding. But even if it's public funding, they're pretty jaded. But that was one of the more like balanced pieces, and they interviewed people on both sides, and I feel like they didn't like manipulate the interviews to get the objective that they wanted. I felt like they were pretty honest. And so I guess in that case, sometimes it gets out there. Sometimes good stuff gets out there. It's hard though. It's
Right.
rare.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. Or honest for that matter, honest stuff or good stuff. And some people would argue that it's not good if it's honest because they want their agenda being pushed. So it gets these very gray lines, specifically when it comes to political documentaries too. There's one specific to Colorado called the Rocky Mountain Heist. Have you heard about that one?
I have heard about that one.
That one's fascinating. It really is. And I think that they did a good job at documenting it for what it was, but I don't know who it was funded by, and I don't know. So I do think that there was still probably an agenda there. I think it accomplished its goal for the party that it was in support of, and was extremely educational for me, regardless of how much of it is fact, like proven truth versus what may still be theory. But it all ties back into Tina Peters' arrest and things like that, if you're familiar with the issue.
I'm not, and I gotta watch it. What's it about?
The Rocky Mountain Heist is about the fact that George Soros funds a group in Colorado called the Gang of Four. And the only reason that I know about this is because I was asked to run for office as a House representative here in my state. And so I got really educated really quick about some of the issues that the conservative or Republican Party was facing. And the Gang of Four was planted. They had plants in the public education system and in all over. Basically, it's this concept that if there's enough money, that any political party can take over any state as long as they put the right people in the right places. And so it was something that had actually been talked about for years. Politicians would joke, oh, we should, we'll just implement the heist, we'll just take over. But it had never actually been done in real life. And George Soros funded the Gang of Four. That's Jared Polis, Pam Stryker, and two others that I can't remember off the Tim Gills, and a third that I never remember the name for. Dumped a ton of money into political campaigns and disparaging the opposing candidates. Wrote the bills and ran commercials in a way that didn't actually represent at all in any way, shape, or form what the bills were about, because most people don't go read the bills during committee hearing. They just see commercials or they hear advertisements and they say, oh, this one increases costs for XYZ, or this one gives free XYZ, and they don't know anything about the intricacies of the bill. And they took over Colorado during this duration of time, and it was a test. Colorado was the trial state, and it's called the Rocky Mountain Heist.
And has that spread? Has that spread beyond? Is that now California? Is that kind of why?
They are now doing. California was always the reason that Colorado was the trial state was because Colorado was purple. Colorado was actually leaning red, and they wanted to take an opposing state, a state that was either predominantly red or pretty 50-50, so that they actually had an honest sample of whether or not this theory would work. So that they did it in Colorado.
And Colorado's pretty blue now, isn't it?
Colorado is extremely blue now. There's definitely certain counties that lean red or counties that are purple, but it is a very liberal state for the most part.
Yeah, I don't like that stuff. It's a shame that we've that these people have derailed. Anyways, this is a whole other topic. It's outside of my expertise, but I am.
Documentary side is what fascinated me, though, because a lot of these people that are doing documentaries are influenced by money. So my question that stemmed from that side tangent story is really, how did you choose documentary? It's a multi-part question, but the first part of it is, how did you choose documentary film style when you got into this line of work?
Well, so picking up the story where we left off, where I had kind of moved out to Los Angeles and I started doing commercials. I'd been very fortunate at some level. I guess almost felt serendipitous. And like I said, I had done that film in Minneapolis. I'd also done commercials in Minneapolis. And when I got to LA, like I was in LA for 3 days and I was doing music videos for, I don't know if you guys remember Busta Rhymes. Do you remember Busta Rhymes? Within my first 3 days, I was like on a crew and I was doing music videos and I was connecting with the director and the AD. And I remember seeing Busta Rhymes people. I think it was because I was so young and wide eyed. And there was something innocent about me that I think people in LA appreciated. And I also worked extremely hard. Knowing what I know about California now, me growing up a country boy, that when I was at the age of 12, I was baling hay on my uncle's farm, for 8 hours, 10 hours a day. And I knew what a hard day's work was. So like, I wasn't afraid to show up on set and wake up and show up on, at 6 a.m. and work until 7 p.m. and do it again the next day. And so I really kind of took off in the commercial and film. And some of my highlights, I actually worked on I worked a couple of days on the set of the Fast and the Furious, which was kind of cool now in hindsight. At the time, it was just another film. I did some stuff with Rob Zombie and Will Smith and Brooke Shields and Jennifer Lopez. I got a funny story with Jennifer Lopez. We were shooting a L'Oreal commercial, and it was a pool scene, and it was a manufactured pool inside of a studio at Universal Studios. And she was pushing up. She didn't have a top on. She was doing like a half push up, and it was like a reflection. They got the camera low enough so that it was all a mirror. The water became like a mirror. So you didn't see below the water. You just saw the reflection. And so, they cleared out all the crew because obviously she's going to come to set with just a towel wrapped around her, and then she's going to get in the water with, I think she had bottoms on, but she just didn't have a top. And they said, hey, Barry, we're going to have you stand here with the warm air. I had like this big thing with warm air, and to keep her warm if she gets out. When she gets out, she'll get cold. And I was like 24 years old, 23 years old, and I must have had like I, I must have looked like a biggest dork ever. I was just young, but I mean, imagine at that age, like I'm gonna be in an exclusive room with 4 other people while Jennifer Lopez is like getting naked. So she walked in the room and she looked around and scoped out the area and who was there. And she looked over at me and basically she said, "Him out." And so that was the end of my moment that it ended climactically. But my experience in film was that it was what it is. It's fake. It's acting. It's theatrical. It's not real. And there was something about that I didn't like. And it seemed like it rubbed off into the culture, and I began to like not really know like what was manufactured and what was real at that time in my life. And because it bleeds, when you're around acting and then you're around fake people and you're around everyone's like looks at you as an object, and can you offer them something, or et cetera, and you begin to become cynical and lose kind of context to like what's important in life, and what's real in life, and when people are suffering and struggling, like being able to like recognize that that's important to like help those people out. But in LA, that wasn't really the case. It felt very hollow, and so I left that career after about 4 or 5 years, and I moved to Northern California, where I got into doing shows for Animal Planet and Nat Geo, and that was my introduction to documentary filmmaking. And I made a documentary on the Daredevils of Niagara Falls was my first documentary, and I hired a private investigator and met all these daredevils, and I still remember their names. The Steve Trotter is like the most famous. Steve Trotter was like a Florida guy who was a promotional famous guy, and Dave Munday, and the list goes on. And so I just fell in love. I was like, I'm meeting real people. I'm meeting them in person. I'm hearing about their stories. I'm capturing their stories. I'm getting all this archive, all their family photos and all their pictures of going over the falls and all the details of how it happened. And I loved it, fell in love with it. And I never looked back, really. That's kind of been, and that has taken different shapes, but it's always been my career path. So that's kind of how I think I answered your question about how I got into documentary films, right? That was the
Yeah,
question.
absolutely, you did. I love that. Was the Daredevils of Niagara Falls also self-funded?
That was funded by National Geographic.
Okay. What was the first documentary that you did, or at what point in your career break
Sorry.
off into doing documentaries that have been more like like Walton Film Studios?
Well, then I had a friend in San Francisco who was running a ultra marathon. Have you heard of ultra marathon running? And he was doing the Hawaii Hurt 100, which is a 100-mile race on the island of Honolulu in the jungles. And I thought he was fascinating, and I bought a camera and I started filming him.
Okay.
And his name is Mark Gilligan, and he ended up making Ultra Sign Up, and Ultra Sign Up is now kind of like the platform for a majority of all ultra races throughout the country. And so that was my start. That was my first film, and that screened in Sedona Film Festival, and then got one in the Hawaii Film Awards. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not so bad at this. And so I just kept going after that. Went and I followed the ultra running kind of trend, and I went to the Himalayas was the next one. I thought, why not go big? If you're going to go big, go to the biggest. So I went and did the highest, longest foot race in the world in the Himalayas of northern India, and almost died on that one. I mean, had some pneumonia when I came back, and I was dealing with high altitude pulmonary edema. When I
Yes.
came back, I had a enlarged valve
Oof.
because it is that is, and but I refused to go down in altitude, so I was at 11,000 feet. I couldn't sleep for the first couple of nights. I was taking like I kept waking up and with a feeling like I was suffocating with asphyxiation, and there's these things called pulse oximeters, and you take them when you go to the doctor. They'll put one on your finger, and they'll take your, and my, what would happen is my oxygen levels were dropping when I would go to sleep. So I flew in from New Delhi into Leh, India, and Leh is at 11,000 feet, 11,500, and when I would go to sleep, your pulse slows down, your breathing slows down, and my blood oxygen level would drop below, um, sustainability, and so I would feel like I'm suffocating. Would get down to like 68% or something like that, and then you would wake out of your dream trying to capture your breath, and you'd just be like, and that went on for 2 nights. But I refused to go down because I had put so much at stake to make this film. And but anyways, I finished it, and actually had to go back a second year, and there's a whole story in this, and I could take up the rest of the hour here talking about this, but that was kind of my introduction. And the one that came out of the Himalayas, the High, that was kind of one of my biggest pieces. I screened that in New York, and I screened it in festivals in Detroit, and it did well. It was received well. It's still in distribution on Amazon, and Amazon Prime. It was my first documentary that made it to Amazon Prime, and so I've just kind of been on that path ever since.
What did risking your own money teach you that being funded by National Geographic, for example, couldn't?
Well, it taught me that I'm really bad at business and I don't know how to make money. $20,000 later, I think I may have made my money back. I'm not sure. I mean, my thing is I was naive, if I'm completely honest with you. I was naive on how, look, I told you how I grew up. I did not come from money. My parents did not have any money to leave me. I do not have any misgivings that they will leave me much money, if any. I was spending the money I made on things that I love doing, and I lived under the premise that if you do what you love, it'll pay. The people say these slogans and these romantic phrases. If you do what you love, the money will follow. Like these types of things. And hey, look, I'm not broke. I've got a house, and I take care of my family, and we live off of what I work on. But that was the premise. I'm a very romantic person, and I'm a very aspirational person, and I tend to believe those slogans to be true at some level. And so that was kind of what I was doing. I was chasing that dream, and I thought it would be an investment. I thought I would get a distributor. I thought I would kind of I was putting it on the line. I wanted to see, I wanted to bet on myself. A lot of that was all about betting on myself. And I mean, I could say things like, "Hey, look, I had the power of post production. I've had the power of editing the story how I wanted." That is not even actually 100% true, because everyone that tells a story tells it for their audience. So the people that have the power are the people that watch it and consume it. And if you're not telling a story that nobody wants to watch, it doesn't matter, right? So you do and you don't. But I think that's a roundabout way of answering your question. I wouldn't change a thing. It was the greatest experience of my life, but I wouldn't say it was like super good business sense. It was just, I'm doing what I love,
I don't know, the one I guess I hear the most is like, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Bullshit.
But
Bullshit.
I don't mean to ruin all these things, guys. No, it's
but
not. That's not true.
but but I think in any dream, there's a part that's naive. I think that's all part of dreaming. I think that's part of dreaming big. You never know for certain anything first that you're going into. And, we're never as smart on day one as we are day 4,000 into our dream. So there's a naivety to dreaming big, and that's what makes, I think, entrepreneurs really special, is that they understand the risk. They understand that they don't know everything. They don't have the answers to everything, but they know where they want to go to.
Yeah, I don't want to be too cynical in my answers. I like to be honest in my answers, but I don't want to be too cynical. So I'm kind of being a little bit one sided towards the side that I'm a little bit jaded towards. In my response of not being good business sense, and in my response to you of if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, and kind of saying bullshit. And excuse me, I hope I'm allowed to swear on here, and if not, you guys will bleep that out. But
Like
but
sound effects, but you're allowed to.
do a little beep. That's
Yeah.
beep. I'm sorry. Well,
My
that's
ADHD more.
boom. There we go. Or I'll just say that's baloney. That's baloney.
No, you can say whatever.
But so I don't want to be jaded, and look, the truth is I wouldn't do it any different. There are days that I am like, I have got a good life. It's easy to lose track of how good your life is when you're living your dreams, and when you're doing what you want to do. It's easy to lose track of that because I don't sit at a corporate desk every day anymore dreaming of what I could be doing. I'm doing it. And so, but trust me when I say, like, I push myself hard, and there are a lot of things that I don't want to do, but I do them because they get me to the place where I get to do what I love. I work out 3 to 4 days a week at the gym right after I drop my son after school in the morning. And there's days when I do and don't want to do it, but I do it because I know that if I stay in shape, I can be in the field like I'm 25 still. And I have to be in the field like I'm 25 because I have to keep up with guys with young companies. I'm going next week to North Carolina, and we're shooting a product for a military subcontractor, and I'm going to be out capturing like some really cool action of some really cool devices that I can't talk about. But I wouldn't be able to do it at that level and race around and capture it all if I wasn't keeping myself in shape and wasn't working out. And today I went to a leadership thing, and I'm not in love with going to like a small room and sitting in front of even though it was a general and he's a very important person and he's got a lot to offer, I would rather be just editing and telling stories. But I do that because I know I'm going to need leadership skills to kind of get better at helping guide my company and guide people that work with me. And so that's the full answer in that. Like, yeah, you do what you love. You won't work. It won't feel like work when you're doing what you love. But there are a lot of things that you will still need to do to keep what you love going. Just like anything in life, nothing is one-sided. Everything, and so it's just important to keep that in perspective, because like those romantic statements have actually fooled me, and they've actually fooled me at times, and they've made me jaded at times, and I've given up on things that I shouldn't give up on. And so the truth is like, follow your dreams, but know that they're going to take work, and money isn't always going to be there, but you're going to be better off than someone that just sold out for money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or someone who never followed their dreams and sits at a corporate desk all day and is just like, I'm 60 now, I'm retiring in 5 years, and maybe I'll get to do what I want. And then they have a heart attack at 60, 66. And their kids are like, my dad worked the job his entire life and wanted to go to France and never did, so that's the trade-off.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. I mean, listen, I like doing my day job, which is Uber, but like I'll be up till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning editing an episode. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but there's nothing more that I would rather do. It's 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 I love doing it. Even all the hard stuff, even the stuff that is tedious, even the stuff that, it's in the end, I love it. I love it all. And, for me, it's not it the reason why that resonates with me is like it doesn't, like, I don't feel like I'm clocking in. when I'm doing this. I feel like this is, you know, what I love doing.
Yeah. And what's honest about your answer is that, and you have to do something that maybe you don't love so that you can have the time to do this, right? And those pieces that you don't love are kind of where the divide is, and I have to do, and we all kind of do that, and someday you'll get to a point where you won't have to do that, but it'll be something else, and it's always there, but it's still worth having that purpose and meaning in your life because you're chasing your true north and what you want for yourself.
There was a question that I wanted to ask. You were talking about running, you were talking about your story in the Himalayas. Is there like somebody you would love to do a documentary on? I think of like somebody like David Coggins, because you were talking about marathons and running. Is like, do you have that like dream person you would like to follow in documentary because of the nature of who they are and what they do? Or are you more not individual, but more stories on other things?
Hmm. Wow, that's a really good question. Um, At the moment, there isn't a clear picture of someone that I would like to tell their story. I've had stories in the past. There used to be an ex-Pistons player that there was a murder mystery that disappeared in a murder mystery. He actually played with Michael Jordan too. And for the longest time, I wanted to tell his story, I uncovered his mom. Hired an investigator. I'm not saying his name for a reason. And I uncovered his mom and his brother. It wasn't his mom wouldn't talk because it was because his mom wouldn't talk. And I worked so hard to get her on the phone, and I finally got her on the phone. It was maybe one of the most intense conversations I've ever had in my life. And she alluded to the fact the reality was that it was a Cain and Abel story.
Hmm.
And the brother, all the evidence points to the fact that he killed his older brother and then disappeared himself. And she wouldn't talk. And she basically said to me, what would you do if it was your sons? And that was a story that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to tell this story. This is such a powerful story. But the central figure, I don't know her well enough. I tried for years to develop a relationship with her. I said, I'll come and have coffee with you. She had talked to reporters and she had gotten jaded by reporters. Her story had been manipulated so many times. She didn't trust anybody. And so, and I think at this time, this has been 10 or 15 years ago now. And I think at this point she's passed. I really wanted to tell her story. And at that point, I was working with the NBA. So I had all these connections in the NBA and I could kind of source players and source people that worked with them. And I could begin to build this amazing story. And that was a dream because I wanted to make a 30 for 30 out of it. So that would have been an example. But at the moment, the story I've always dreamed of telling a story like that, or like Cocaine Cowboys, or like the two Escobars, or these stories that have exclusive access to like hardened criminals or like really like edgy people. It's very hard to get that access. And so at the moment, and the people that do get that access, I'm always, I think like they know somebody, they knew somebody, they grew up around somebody, and they're willing to take extremely dangerous risks of basically their life to tell that story. Those are the stories I love. Those are the stories I'd love to tell. And at this point, unfortunately, I do not have the access to any of that. So I can't say there's someone top of mind right now. A lot of my work comes to me because people present it to me. I get presented a lot of things. I've got 3 or 4 projects right now that I'm just kind of not really sure if they're right for me. But and that's it, so that's kind of where I'm at in my career right now. I always have my eye open though. I always have my eye open for like that rare, unique story and the access to some rare, unique individual. But at the moment, I don't have anyone specifically.
I had something happen to me that only I think 2 people know about. It was probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, but these people have so much money that I'm too scared to talk about it because they could literally make me disappear. Like, I would not exist anymore, but I've wanted so bad to, like I'm like, "Damn, that would be so cool," but I'm like, "I am not that brave." I'm just not.
To tell the story.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that part maybe, but, like, turning it because it would be I mean, like, it'd be really
Going public.
yeah, like, that part. Like, not while it's recording, like, maybe off camera kinda thing. Like, I can't talk about yeah, that was a whew, yeah, I left in tears. I was surprised I even left. I was like, "I'm gonna get kidnapped here tonight," but they let like, what was going on ended, and I got in my car and I called my dad, and I remember my dad this back when I still talk to him. I think this was 2021, and my dad said, "Sydney, you're a little fish in a big pond. Like, they don't care about you that much. Keep your head down. Don't talk about it. Move on with your life." And they forgot about me for 4 years, and then they came up again last year, and so it's been a whew, like, it makes me, like, the hair on my neck stand up talking about it, but I might tell you about it off camera. I might have to
But people do get disappeared, and the challenging reality of that most people don't come to terms with or really think about is justice isn't always served.
mm-mm, nope.
Like people get disappeared, and people get away with disappearing people. And you know, we talked when we first met. We talked about what the Charlie Kirk piece and kind of what I did and captured a little moment of that in my experience going down there. And I had a bigger vision, but I've kind of set that aside. But that's an example of someone who got disappeared in a public forum, and we do not. You know, you can believe the narrative if you want to believe the narrative, but we do not have the culprits or the motive,
No, no. Um, nope, we sure don't.
and we never will. We never will.
No, because 'cause they'll
We
keep
never will.
disappearing people that get too
Yeah,
close.
there will be no justice, and that's just the harsh reality. So when you're taking the risks, like what you're thinking about saying,
Mhm.
you know, and the best, the one person that I have that doesn't get much credit, that is maybe one of the smartest people of our generation, is Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden did not get disappeared. He released some of the deepest secrets of our government and escaped, other than other than being in asylum in Russia and never being able to return to his family or his country. He escaped unscathed by the US government or the people that would like to disappear him. And that's the level, and if you read his book and if you watch his documentary, that's the level of intelligence you have to have before you should be willing to out powerful people, because they are and he outsmarted the US intelligence community. He frankly he did, and that is his brilliance and his awareness of how to do that cannot be unstated, because he technically is a free man, and the US government would at that time, not as much now, but at that time, but they still would. They wanted him dead.
Yeah, that's insane.
They wanted him silenced.
And they still like I've heard that like President Trump wanted to pardon him his first term, and they wouldn't allow him to do that.
Yeah. Well, we don't really have control of our security state.
But it's amazing that people will go on video saying, "I if I end up dead, I did not commit suicide," and they still disappear.
Well, and then I'll just say that, and we should all say that collectively. If I end up dead, I
Yeah,
am not.
universal soon.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's you have to say that, you have to shore up. I mean, I wasn't sure how long Elon Musk would be around, there's no reason, and I think Charlie Kirk would still be around, but I think he was a little naive. He was a little naive. He was a little brazen and naive. I think I wish that Charlie had been because his death didn't really serve his death didn't really like I think his saying was kind of like, like I got to keep doing it even in the face of the fear of death. And when he died, there was like this rally behind like, well, his death will have purpose and his death will not go out without meaning. And I'm beginning to think that that's not actually true. I don't think his life is in vain. And I do think his death maybe in 20 years, some kid will rise up and be like, that changed my life, and he'll be the president and he'll change the direction of America. But as it stands right now, Charlie Kirk's death doesn't seem to have served a lot of purpose. And I wish he had been a little more cautious with himself.
Well, you like stories, right? So evidently, Glenn Beck did this whole speech, I believe, at the Washington Monument or somewhere like that, when Charlie Kirk was just a kid. And Charlie Kirk heard that speech and told him that that speech had an impact on what he had become. So, like you saying, like 20 years later, I truly believe that. And I'm on. I hear what you're saying about taking a stand. Um, you got to be smart about stuff, but I think they win if he backs down and stops doing what he did. It wasn't. I think there has to be a part for change to happen that you need to be willing to risk your life. Um, real change. Um, and I don't know that it's necessarily naive. I think from what I've heard, and again, this is just second, third, fourth handed. He and Erica had the conversations that he could possibly die. So I think you go in knowing that. I think if he would have stopped, his impact would have stopped. Like I think there was something beautiful in what he was doing, and that's why he was a target because he was willing to go where other people weren't.
I so strongly do not trust Erica Kirk. It's unreal.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Especially, she was her behavior was suspect for a while, but after this recent thing,
Absolutely.
it's kind of like, God, who? She's kind of, yeah. I kind of turned it off though. I went so deep dive on that for so long. Um, I kind of resolved in my mind that it's kind of, not to repeat Candace Owen, but it's kind of, what do they say, it's all fake and gay. But that's kind of where I'm at with it, where it's like there's nothing about, I'm not going to get resolution. Nothing's as it seems. I'm probably not going to know. I can spend hours and days of my life like watching every video and getting every angle and listen to every opinion, and I'm never gonna get resolution. I'm just gonna let this go. And I wasn't like Charlie Kirk wasn't my brother. I was sad more for the country and the direction of the country. Like I, I think the radicalization and the behaviors that we saw from 2020 on till 2025, and even there's some things that are questionable now, but it's just like, who are we? We've completely lost our identity as a country. So I think when Charlie, I felt like he was a North Star to like the identity that I understood. Like we used to reward our heroes. We used to have heroes and reward them. And we were okay with people being successful, and we celebrated them being successful. And the death of Charlie Kirk for me was like, we're killing our heroes. We're killing successful people that are elevating us and making us better as a country and as a whole, and that are out contributing to if you followed Charlie and didn't just swallow the sound bites and the TikToks from like whoever wanted to dismantle him, you knew that like he had genuine interest in elevating people's lives and making this place better, and was willing to accept being wrong at times. And so that for me, I think, is what captured me. Is I'm like, we are killing, we are killing our heroes, and that's just a downward spiral. I don't see that. I don't see that being a good outcome for anyone. And so I think that's what caught me with Charlie. It was sad to see someone young die in that fashion, but I think it was more about who are we as a country and where are we going and why are we doing this? Why is Dylan Mulvaney in the White House?
Yeah, no kidding.
And why is that what we're elevating? Just weird. Anyways.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap this up, because dude, I think we could spend 3 hours talking, and this is such an interesting topic, of just documentaries and stuff like that. Going back to, like, I guess the beginning, like through your struggles, what has your struggles taught you or developed in you that has really made a difference in helping you succeed in life?
Well, I definitely have, I mentioned to you guys, and I don't know how much I mentioned in the show, but I was held back in the 3rd grade, and that was a really traumatic thing for me as a child, to be like, and watch all my peers go forward while I stayed back. And as an adult, sharing that story doesn't sound like that big of a deal. As a kid, it was a huge deal. And then on top of the fact that I went to a small private Christian school with like 15 kids in a classroom, and for the next until literally 10th grade, I was in this school watching the class that I got held back at go ahead while I kind of try to catch up with them. And I always felt like I'd been disenfranchised, like I didn't have a voice in the process, like I was people stopped believing in me and stopped believing in my abilities, and I'd lost faith in the institution. I had become an anti-institutionalist by the time I left college. I was frustrated at my family because I felt like they didn't believe in me and didn't see what my potential, and I had huge dreams for myself. And I think all that built up a sense of like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Um, that has driven me. Now I'm a little more resolved with that now than I was in my 20s and 30s and even 40s. But still, I think that drives me to this place of like, I want to be, world renowned in my work. And so it's unrefutable that all the people that discounted me and didn't believe in me and thought I wasn't capable and undermined me and stepped on me when and to keep me down, all those people, that it's unrefutable that they were wrong and misguided and misjudged me. And I guess it's kind of like, Michael Jordan. They talk about Michael Jordan, how he would use anything to fuel him. And I think my struggles in that regard have been, it could be unhealthy at some level, but I think in the best fashion, it's been healthy fuel to like keep going, keep overcoming hardship. When people tell you you can't, don't listen to them. When people don't think you're capable, don't listen to them. It doesn't matter, and you have to find it within yourself. You have to find it within yourself, and you have to look within yourself for that drive and for that sense of direction, because you'll never find it outward and maybe upward, not only about me, but about something greater than myself. But I think that's what my struggles have kind of driven me to kind of keep going. And I still feel like my best days are yet to come.
And we look forward to seeing those best days.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
Remember us when it happens.
Absolutely. I'll remember you, and I'm going to come and get your story.
You know what? That would mean so much to me. You have no idea.
We'll get your. I want to know more about this story. Um, and and when the time is right, maybe help you tell it.
Heck yeah.
hey, if you ever run into Matthew McConaughey, he's one of my dream guests. So
Yeah.
That would be cool, Matthew McConaughey. He's a cool guy. That would be cool to see that happen for sure.
so but that's going to take us to our key takeaway segment. So
Key takeaways.
what's your story? We've heard Barry's story, and how he wasn't birthed on royalty row, and had everything handed to him. He had to overcome stuff, he had to work hard for stuff, he had to experience stuff. And his story led him to doing what he is passionate about, and 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 ultimately, his reward isn't guaranteed in financial terms, but it's guaranteed in satisfaction. Living a life full of purpose, living a life full of being proud about what he's accomplished. That's what I heard over this episode. I heard a man who took risk, who fought, his upbringing, who fought different things, fought living on a mountain. His life was at stake to not fail, to get that story. And my question to the audience is, what's your story? What's driving you? What's pushing you? What's over your horizon? Where are you supposed to be at? If you're unhappy, if you're, I drive Uber and Lyft, and an amount of people who are so unhappy, miserable. I think the reason why half of America drinks all weekend long is because they're miserable Monday through Friday. And if your Monday through Friday is causing you to have to drink your sorrows away, maybe figure out something else to do with your life. It may not be easy. It may not be financially, the best, but you may be happier, and you may not have to spend your weekend drinking your weekend away because you have found no purpose Monday through Friday. Barry knows his purpose. I know my purpose. What's your purpose? And, are you achieving it? That's going to be my takeaway from this episode.
I like that. I think that my key takeaway from all of this conversation is that not everything that you see is the truth, but it's almost always intentional. And the real danger isn't just the information, it's the information that people never choose to question. Because in a world where narratives can be funded and altered, or even framed, if you don't think for yourself, then you're just living in somebody else's reality. And it's why we have just this body of sheep that just will walk off of any cliff that they're pointed in the direction of. And so, based on this conversation today, yes, there are some film documentary producers that are self-funded and don't have a narrative outside of sharing the story, but discernment is so crucial in the world that we live in today. So that's my key takeaway.
And make sure you support those self-funded documentary creators.
Yes, indeed. But Barry, if you had one gold nugget of wisdom that you wanted people to be able to take away from today's episode, what do you want our viewers to hear?
That's a big question right there. It's a lot better to do what you want and do what you dream of doing with your life than to put it on the back burner for another day. It's better for your kids, it's better for your family, and it's better for yourself. And I can speak to all the challenges I spoke to and all the I different statements I've made about money or struggles. I wouldn't change the way I live for any other life, or any corporate job. A lot of people are sitting there going, but I can't. And then how will I do this? I can tell you, I have had not months, but years where I have wondered how I'm going to make it. And somehow or another, it always kind of works out. And that experience has made me stronger and made life more real. And I think that's part of what makes it special is I feel like I am alive. I really do. And the struggle and all of it, I feel very alive. I think it's not about escaping the struggle. It's not about knowing how it's going to work out. It's about being alive. And I think that would be kind of my thing is like, do it, do what you want to do with your life, do what you love doing with your life, and do it now.
You know, that is so true. And I remember the first day that I stepped away from a 9 to 5 when I started doing Uber. I had that realization. It's like, dude, if I don't do this, I don't eat. Like, I don't eat. Like, I don't have a guaranteed paycheck anymore. Like, I have to work. And as scary as that is, it's also a great motivator. It's also a great motivator, and you do feel alive. Like when it comes to push comes to shove, there's an aliveness about that, you know?
Yeah.
So it can be scary at the same time that it is awesome, and it's okay. Um, so tell us in the comment what stood out to you this episode, what your key takeaway is. Hashtag my purpose. Tell us what your purpose is, what you're aiming for, what you want to achieve, what you're dreaming big in life in the comments below. And when you're commenting below, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that follow button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So we appreciate everybody who subscribes to our YouTube channel. We're just under 200, and I know we're going to make 1,000 by the end of this year. Hopefully before that, but I know by the end of this year we're hitting 1,000. So be a part of that journey. Help us out. It helps with the algorithms. It helps get stories like this told, and just please support. And that's going to bring us to our final five.
The final five.
Who is your hero and why?
I got like three heroes I want to say at the same time. I'm like, well, Michael Jordan is a hero, and it's because of his focus and intention and kind of his going with it. Ken Burns is a hero because he raised so much. He was really good at raising funds and making great documentaries. And my father is a hero because he's a good, hardworking man. He raised his family. He sacrificed a lot for his family, and I can appreciate that.
I like it. Very good.
Love it.
Let's go with if your life was a documentary or a movie, what would the title be?
Well, I wrote a book called The Unknown Adventurer. So that's kind of what comes to mind. And that's a double entendre because it's going into the known and the unknown are kind of like yin and yang and the chaos and order. And so there's philosophy in that. And then a lot of my life has just been adventure and taking adventure or following adventure or capturing adventures. So I would probably use my book title as it stands as kind of that response.
I like that. Very good.
I think mine would be chaotic purpose. What would yours be? Because I love that question. What would yours be, Sydney?
Probably my book title. The book that I've written, probably Courageous Considerations, maybe just Courageous.
Awesome.
But for different reasons outside of just the context of my book.
So if you had either one book, one song, one quote, one verse, one documentary, whatever it is, what is something that's impacted your life that is a lifelong motto of yours, something that you live by?
Don't put off, what is this saying? Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today.
Mm, That's a really good one. I need to staple that somewhere and look at it all the time because my ADHD just has me think that things that are not due for 18 months have to be done now, and things that are due tomorrow can be done in 18 months. And my life is constantly chaos because of it. So thanks for that piece of wisdom. Um,
And who was Popeye's friend? I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a cheeseburger today. He was never putting off for tomorrow what he could do today, right?
Okay, next question for you is going to be there's a lot of people that are very intrigued by, especially with modern day media, with AI accessible to them. There's a lot of people that are very intrigued by this world of getting into producing. And I don't mean necessarily the style or exact work that you do, but how do you recommend, or what is your piece of advice to maybe somebody young that wants to immerse themselves in this industry? It's really about connections. I mean, do you have to do it by going to Hollywood? What's your piece of advice for people that want to immerse themselves into this and don't know how?
Well, it's extremely hard. It requires a great deal of kind of stick with itness. When you're young, you're cheap and you'll probably get hired more. When you're old, you're more expensive and you'll probably get hired less. So, do it while you're young. And it is about networking. It is about who you know. It's more about who you know than any other industry probably out there because it's, especially if you're going, it depends on what you're going for. I mean, if you're going to be a wedding videographer, I mean, you could do that in your local town, be realistic about what you can do. But if you want to do movies, like you're not going to do movies in Smallville. You might get a lucky experience like I did in Minneapolis where a film came to town. But for the most part, you're going to have to move to New York, Atlanta, or Los Angeles. Um, yeah, and get over the romantic, exciting quality of it. It's work at the end of the day. It's just work, and lots of times it's extremely long days and very hard work. But there are very exciting moments, so it's kind of a trade-off.
Good advice. And
Absolutely.
our final question is, if you could sit down and have a cup of coffee and a conversation with somebody either living or dead, who would it be and why?
Bob Hope,
Mm,
because he lived during a pretty amazing era in Hollywood and in film and in Los Angeles. And when I moved out to LA, I kind of moved out kind of with that Art Deco kind of post World War II kind of Rat Pack Frank Sinatra era in mind. And that had long since passed. But I would love to sit down with Bob Hope for just 1 hour and pick his brain about the golden days. But I would have to do it in a time machine because I wouldn't want to sit down with him in the modern age. I wouldn't want to sit down with him in a bungalow in like the famous like Los Angeles hotel where they used to hold the Academy Awards, and where um Frank Sinatra sang and Sammy Davis Jr. had a room and et cetera, et cetera. So
Dig it. Well, Barry, thanks for being with us here today. And we didn't really get to talk about your book, so we're going to have to probably have you on again because there's just so much to unpack with your story. But tell our viewers where they can go to buy your book, follow you, hear more about your story.
WaltonFilmStudios.com. WaltonFilmStudios.com. I'm rebranding, and that is the name of where we're going, focusing more on directing and less on trying to do everything and more on just doing one thing. But WaltonFilmStudios.com, I sent it in the chat. And you can send it, you can share it. My old link that I think you guys have, they're all redirected to waltonfilmstudios.com, but that has my documentaries, that has my book, that has my bio, that has everything you want. It has links to the Prime, Amazon Prime links, everything's there. And you can buy a book, you can get a book, you can get it. And if you're watching this, and if you've made it this far in our conversation, there's an ebook. You can get a free download of an ebook if you fill out the form. I will send that free ebook to you, and there's a link under the books that you can get that. So happy to send that. Be sure to let me know that you saw me on the Common Ground podcast, and you can and I'll send you a free copy.
Can you just give us the title of the book and just a quick synopsis of what it's about?
The Unknown Adventurer. It's about overcoming obstacles and struggles to achieve your dreams. And it's really just like a lot of my adventures and my experiences compressed into one. A lot of the stuff we talked about here, my Hollywood experience, my Nat Geo and Animal Planet experience, my Himalayas experience, my documentary films. It's all in there. And falling in love with my wife, moving to Italy, which is a great story in itself. So it's all in there and full of life lessons, full of experience. My first book, and I think it's a great snapshot of how you can approach your dreams and overcome hurdles to get there.
Awesome.
Please go out and support Barry Walton, get his book, check out what films he's got going on, check out his website. And, these are kind of people who we need to support, who are trying to create objective things, allow you to choose to make up your mind. So I think that's awesome. Well, remember, when we take the time to hear somebody's story, it gives us the opportunity to find common ground. Thank you again, Barry, for being our guest today. For Sydney and myself, it has been our pleasure being your host, and you have been listening to the Common Ground podcast. God bless and good night.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground podcast. Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground podcast. The Common Ground podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and/or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.